I have a shelf surrounding my breakfast nook at home where various knickknacks and junk store finds are displayed, and items get regularly selected to go with me to my EPS Podcast live exhibits. One such artifact, a Stickney and Poor's allspice container from the first half of the 20th century, caught the eye of Jeff from Loaded Question a few months ago. You may be amazed how such a random item sparks a conversation that involves Calvin and Hobbes and Homestar Runner in less than 10 minutes.
An item that I had just kind of decorating my breakfast nook that I never used, just a pile of stuff now, but Stickney and Poor's allspice, America's oldest spice millers. Yeah. I think there's still some in it. I don't know if it's any good anymore.
Can I taste it?
Do you guys use any? Yeah, please don't taste it. You might, something terrible might happen. I don't know.
I don't mind.
I do. I don't think the insurance covers that. So this is the question I have for you is, where was this made and what locations are associated with it? So see if you can find on there anything where it was made.
Boston, New England, right in Boston.
Yeah, and so the spice itself probably came all the way from Sri Lanka or India or Madagascar or something out there.
Where spices are from.
Right, and not Boston. But did you see the name of the street?
Oh, Spice Street, huh? Look at
that.
Yeah,
and we were talking earlier about the Spice Girls, so I don't know if that's when they came to
I'm
America.
I'm actually one of the Spice Girls, that's why.
You said you met one of them?
No, I am one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are you sporty or which Spice Girl are you?
Poopy.
Poopy Spice. I remember her. She was kicked out for smelling, and then she opened up her own spice.
That's really cool, though. Spice Street, Boston, USA. I did not expect that, to be honest.
So, what date would you put this packaging approximately?
I'd say that's probably like a 30s thing.
Yeah, I would put that around the same times too. So 30s, 1930s or so. By that point, we call allspice for a long time. Allspice was called pimento. That's how it was known, or pimenta or Jamaica spice. And it had all sorts of different names. But just the name allspice and the fact that they tell you where it came from, where does that tell you? Where do you think this was being utilized? Who was buying this, and what were they using it for?
Based on the name, I'd assume everybody.
Right.
Everywhere. It's allspice. Allspice, as far as its flavor profile, I'd assume it'd be kind of shipped mainly to the continental U.S.
Yeah. And I feel like by adding Boston, Massachusetts, Spice Street, add some credibility to it, because, since the colonial era, Boston was the busiest port in the entire British Empire, and they were bringing in all sorts of stuff from all over the world, and I guarantee you that's what they're still trying to make people think about here with this.
Huh.
Do you make the beer here at Loaded Question?
Nope. I actually used to work at a brewery called Tilton Brothers for a long time.
Oh, yeah, I know Tilton Brothers. Down in Hampton, right?
Exactly, yeah. It unfortunately closed in January, but beautiful beer, beautiful people, and from working there, I ended up landing in a beautiful place like Loaded Question. My question is to you, though. I have a quick question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Why do you have this in part of your thing?
So, I don't even know where that came from, but I have, as you can probably imagine from my collection of other random crap, around the house I live in was built in 1939, and to stay consistent with the decor, whenever my wife and I come across something like this, whether it's an old tin or a plate or something like that, we put it in the space. There's a little shelf just below the ceiling, and it kind of adds a nice little character to that.
And these come from your basement or
no? I
attic?
think this probably came from a thrift store or off the side of the road of an antique store or something like that.
I love antique and thrifting.
My wife works in Northwood, which is Antiques Alley.
Okay.
And as you drive up and down 202 or Route 4, excuse me, I'm having too much Loaded Question beer. And a lot of times those antique stores will leave stuff on the side of the road and, that they can't sell. And she'll just come home with a box of old sheet music or a bunch of old, most of our dishes at home come from the side of the road. We clean them first, but that one probably came from that too. It was that kind of assortment. So
that's why I chose that as one of your items. Because I grew up in a very old house on Elm Street in Newmarket, and I used to dig in the backyard aimlessly as a child.
That's
and
right.
I've actually dug up one of these before.
That same tin.
That same exact tin.
That's awesome.
The colors.
Because in the days probably before the 70s, there wasn't any kind of landfills. So people would have a throwaway pile in their backyard and just bury it.
Exactly.
And that was like, it's fine, I can't see it. And so that was that. And if you go back even further, people just throw it in their outhouse.
They didn't even care.
And for archaeologists, that is a score. They always want to find out where the outhouse was, because that's where they're going to find the cool stuff.
Right next to it, I found a bunch of apothecary bottles and stuff like that. And then I brought it to my uncle, who's the town historian in the town I live in, John Carmichael. And he told me that I didn't know until I brought something to ask. And it turns out that the town doctor lived in that house.
Oh, okay.
And that's why all these spices and herbs and weird bottles were just thrown in the backyard.
Because that was his medicine, probably. That's how he did
healed
it.
People. And back then, you went to the doctor's house to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
There was no doctor's office.
Or he would come to you, and it wasn't
and
like
he had the vehicle, the doctor's vehicle, which is part hearse, because half the time you died.
Oh no, he didn't bring the allspice soon enough.
No, exactly.
That's why he buried it in the back. Do you remember Calvin and Hobbes?
I am obsessed with Calvin and Hobbes.
Do you remember the storyline when he goes digging? He's looking for fossils, and he comes across a bottle, and it's a bunch of random junk, and then he reassembles it into some prehistoric creature.
Yes,
that he imagines.
I know exactly.
And it's like a whistling dinosaur thing.
Yes,
and it's like that's the kind of thing that you don't think to do, or when you find a pile of stuff in your backyard.
That was Bill Watterson, right?
Right.
The author. My favorite thing about that is when he started that, comic strip specifically, it went into this fantasy of what these dinosaurs would live and how they would dialogue with each other, and that was just so genius to me. But it was that was a long strip right there. That
went
wasn't
on
a
for a
short
couple
one.
weeks. Yeah. And it was funny because I think most of the audience of his comics could relate to doing exactly what you just described. And I know I did it too in my backyard. I remember coming across old bricks and I'm like, oh, this is probably from the Civil War. And my dad is like, no, these houses were built in the 60s. It's probably just the extra stuff that they didn't build the house with, and they just chucked it into the woods.
Exactly, yeah.
But it gives kids something to do. So
I mean, that's what was my favorite thing about being a kid, because when you hit a tree with a stick or you dig up an empty bottle, your imagination is left to tell you exactly what you did. And that is a world of possibilities right there.
It can be ruined by people like me who will tell you exactly what it was for. And that's part
and that
of
was my uncle, the historian. He was like, I know exactly what that is.
Sorry, kid. It was. So thank you for stopping by.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'll let you get back to work.
Appreciate you having me.
Thanks again.
I got to ask you one more question.
Sure.
Did you turn it off yet?
No, I did not.
All right. If you could pick a favorite dragon of all time, could you name a favorite dragon?
There was this online video series called Homestar Runner.
I know Homestar Runner well.
And
Strong Bad Email.
The Strong Bad.
Yeah.
And there was a dragon that I forget which storyline had it, but they drew it. It was just like a letter S.
Yes.
With another little S, and then it would just like go crazy on a village, and so that's my favorite dragon.
I will tell you what. I've asked that question to a lot of people, and you just won that question.
All right.
You just won that question.
Homestar runner.
I got to go back to bartending.
Thank you very much.
Well, you know what they say. One man's expired, discarded allspice tin is another man's primary source. We are about halfway through Season 2 of the EPS Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening to what you've heard so far. Short episodes like this one, which are products of my EPS Podcast live exhibits, have been coming out on Tuesdays this season, while longer episodes, deeper dives into subjects, are posted on Thursdays. If you like what you hear, consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/EPS Podcast. Follow the show on social media, including YouTube, and especially on Instagram. I look forward to you tuning in again to the EPS Podcast, where everything is a primary source.